and some DXs, and I'm very amused because I didn't have any cards that I was going to pull with this. This is just stuff that's been coming in intuitively today, and but something said pull a card from your new deck from the Oracle Ascendance deck that I have, and I laughed because I thought, you know what, this will probably be one that I'll just look at and go, okay, that's good energy to describe this in or be in while I'm speaking. And then what came out was a card that I didn't know about. This is why I like this deck, because I'm learning stuff. And I believe it's Daikomayo. And it's a Reiki symbol, or Reiki, if you prefer Reiki. And I went and read it and was thinking, this is so funny because this is what I've been sensing, but it was in a different way. It was, I'll explain more in a minute because it fits with the title, Men versus Gentlemen. So, Daiko Mayo, this is the Usi Reiki Master symbol, used in all attunements and in all Reiki healing. There are many variations of this symbol that exist, depending on the teacher and the Reiki system. Daiko Mayo means roughly great being of the universe, shine on me. It can also mean great shining light. I'm sure that you see the relevance considering that this is a twin flame slash triple flame sort of thing. And it says it embraces the idea that the physical body was constructed as a manifestation of the spiritual body. This also coordinates the belief that all illness within the physical body begins as an illness of the spirit. Daiko Mayo cleanses these bodies and heals the spirit, providing wholeness. When it appears in your reading, it asks you to ponder your life path, your goals, and your desires in order to guide you in a loving, compassionate, and abundant way. Cleanse your life of unnecessary energies is the message here. If not for the greater good and for your own good, it is or if it is not for the greater good and your own good, it is not necessary. And one of the big things that I feel called to in there is like, especially when it comes to how I interact with my kids in terms of my DM, because he is their biological father, and I'm aware that a lot of the stuff going on right now is him working out karmas that happen with his actual biological father and the other father figures that got called in, and that's gone through the line, like his ancestral line, for a long time. And what we talked about is that regardless of the outcome of like a 3D relationship between me and him, and I'm honest with them about my feelings that, you know, it's there and like it's not really left, and he's kind of in a, if you go with a 3D sense of a midlife crisis is what's going on, which our therapist agreed with, and but in terms of a spiritual sense, it's a spirit sickness, and this is something that a fair amount of indigenous peoples across the world do believe. And Reiki comes from ancient Eastern practices of the same belief that when we have a physical problem or when we have 3D karma, effectively, it's because of a sickness that started in the spirit. But it's funny. I'm thinking in my head. But it's not necessarily the soul, which cannot ever be sick. But it presents as a sort of sickness in the sense of like staying in low vibes while healing from various shadows. And wow, I feel like I just got a whole bunch of downloads on some things that we are going to experience soon about knowledge about these things. In any case, shining the great light, this great spirit light, and then thinking about like healing the physical, the 3D, the 4D, by going towards it in a spiritual approach. And that's what it felt like when I got the more 3D representations of what DMs and some DXs are thinking about and experiencing right now, which is this, like, what's the difference between a woman and a lady? What's the difference between a man and a gentleman? What's the difference between a friend and a frenemy? Like, what's the difference between a master and an apprentice, a teacher and a student? Like, the discernment. And it's more focused on a man versus a gentleman. It's just that for a lot of them, they've either been steeped in feminine energy, a lot of Cancerian sort of energy for most of their life themes, and so they have a lot more feminine energies around them, and it's easier to look at it that way in a beginning sense. And then also, how do I put it? It's such a sweetness. It's like they're coming out of this energy of always fearing the worst, imagining the worst, and they're a lot of them are starting to recognize that. How do I even put it? It's like um, they're not aware. A lot of them are not aware of cosmic energies that are making it so that things manifest faster, and so for them it's quite a magical experience that, like, when they think about something, especially very strongly, it then happens. And like the feeling I'm getting is that for a fair amount of you, that like has meant that they were afraid that you would do various things, that you would leave them, that you would find someone new that, you know, would love you far better than they ever could, or at least would love you in ways now that would keep you resistant to being open to them when they were ready and they had some idea of how to come to you properly. And that happened for a fair amount of them and you, and you know, and vice versa. You guys were also doing that. Like whatever you feared then happened. If you look at it, especially for those of you that did your journaling like I recommended, you can go in and see you had a fear about something and then it happened, but then you associated that fear, which is instinct and ego, not intuition and heart. You assumed that that was your intuition, that, oh, I was right. And it's not that you were wrong, but this is something that I got shown early on, is like that, you know, the thing that we believe we're right about, or the thing that we fear, or the thing that we you know, pleasurably intuit, like we get to choose. You know, you're always going to be right. So would you rather be right about bad, scary, painful things, or would you rather be right about delightful, benevolent things, right? Where do you want to put your focus? It's not about lying. It's not about ignoring things. Well, where does your focus go? Because that's what will grow in you and around you, right? And these DM energies are in that space of recognizing that there's, I don't know exactly what happened. For some of them, it could just be a switch that just flipped energetically. For others, some big events have happened, tower events, maybe even some deaths and things like that in 3D senses. Like there's been various things that have happened, and it's just like, it's just flipped the switch that they're like, now they're thinking about, you know what I got to lose in trying it this way, in imagining the best. And one of the first things that came to them is this notion of like, because a lot of them have been exploring their masculinity in more of a 3D sense, and a court of public opinion sense, like what does it mean to be a man? But then interacting with you, you know, like they're thinking about, what does this divine masculine thing mean? And like, you know, what kind of feminine is my divine feminine? Like if I look at her compared to, you know, everyone else I'm around, and these people that supposedly, like I've been associating what they do as making me feel like a man, but I feel terrible. So either they're not making me feel like a man, or maybe I've got a different idea of what manhood is in comparison to my feminine. And if I think about what are the differences between my feminine and these other people around me, it feels like she's more of a lady. And but then they're thinking about, what does that mean? Because a fair amount of you, like me, are not necessarily a lady in the sense that you would think of, like, say, the 1920s or the 1800s. Like that's what a lot of people have thought of as a lady. But lady, it, to me, it's divine feminine energy, and that is not determined on what the outer looks like. It's an energy thing. And it's also about being a bit classy. And classy doesn't mean that you, like, I'm gonna say that you never fart, or you never swear, or you don't have any vices or anything. Those are not the indicators of being classy or graceful or eloquent, or, you know, other things that you might associate with being a lady. And they're really thinking about, okay, so what is it that I need to do or feel? Like, they thought that you were like everyone else, that it was about money or attention or affections or 3D things like that. And these DMs and DXs I'm connecting with, they realize that, you know, you do enjoy those things, though they've never been your focus. And they're starting to realize, a lot of them, like, hmm, this feels funny. If, like, one of my guides is saying that a lot of you won't realize that this is it. Like, that this will make a big shift for your connections, is that they were thinking that what you wanted from them was the same things that they thought everyone else wanted from them, was like, you know, provide a house slash castle, to be able to pay for everything, to feel like a brave, you know, a protective person who doesn't have vulnerabilities, who isn't emotional, who can, you know, provide strong seed for children, who, you know, who is always fun, like, and kind of this lockdown version of like union, in terms of thinking about marriage as being like a ball and chain sort of situation, or like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it was the more toxic view of what relationships could look like, and they assumed that that's what you wanted, and that that's what you were waiting for, and it felt like this pressure of like that everybody feels like they should have that, and that's some indication of some things. And especially while you were going through your dark night energies and probably being combative, or, you know, why aren't you talking to me, why aren't you doing this, or if, like me, you share children, like, why aren't you being responsible, stuff like that. And they were caught in this space of, even though they felt like you were, like, they know that you are different on so many levels, their idea of what you wanted was not, it wasn't different from what they assumed everyone else wanted. And so long as they felt like they were inadequate to be able to match you and be able to provide you with those things, they figured they might as well stay where they already felt miserable and had that affirmed, and were with people that acted out toxicities that they grew up with, because it felt safer than being with somebody who there were so many question marks with. Is like, what does she really want? And over time, you and spirit and the contrast of these third parties has shown them that you, like, your idea of union, of marriage, of friendship, of how to interact in the world is so different from anybody else's, that they like, I feel like these those that I'm can check that are coming to me, like, this was stuff that they realized a while ago, but they weren't sure what to do with it, and they were already tangled so much in current situations that it was like, and a lot of the third parties were doing that, like, I want to say intentionally, but a lot of it's not the same. It's not like a metacognitive attention. It's like a survival mode intention. Like, if the DM leaves me, I lose money, and then I'm gonna have to scramble to find somebody new to provide things or try to work. And a lot of them are in victim consciousness of physical problems, mental health problems, things like that. So it became a fear thing. So they wanted to try to maintain and grab power, and they weren't able to, like, seduce the DMs, for at least not for very long. They weren't able, like, they tried to make a lot of promises to do a lot of things like you have done or would do, and fell through on that. They, you know, and in their fearfulness of connections that your DM maintained with you, they, you know, they really kind of got down to this state. I feel like it's like if you have a child who's been really neglected and traumatized, and they've got like one parent that's far too aggressive and one that's far too passive, and then when they're with the passive one, they will just throw fits. It reminds me of a small light work interaction I had on TikTok with somebody that talked about an older child that, like, was screaming and throwing fits with his mom in a Walmart, and then even ended up hitting her in the head with a bottle of wine. And, like, I mean, it was bad, though. When you think about the reality of that situation, like he and others were looking at the boy, who was like, I think it was, he said he was probably about 10, like, looking at him like, he's out of control. He could be dangerous. You better teach him to respect things, because that'll just get worse, especially when he's too big to control. And I came in and was like, this is not a healthy way to look at this. It's exactly that sort of energy that trained this boy to be like this. And the metaphor that comes into me is like, not the metaphor, the example is that when children do that, when anyone does that, an adult does that, it's because they'd rather have negative attention than no attention. And this is an unconscious thing that we do. But we have to have connection when we're young. And so, and then on top of that, if you can't channel frustrations to the place where they are originating from, they get sloughed onto places where they can be born. And that's usually the passive parent, like where, they will sit with them because they're on the codependent end of not doing much of anything about it. But then they also go through cycles of being abusive themselves. And these are generational things that have been passed on. But what the image I'm getting from these DMs is that the third parties have basically been doing that. Like, they've tried everything to try to compete with you, to be more important than you, to outdo you, to drag your name through the mud and the coals, to try to get your DMs to be mad at you, then to be afraid of you, then to feel like you were too good for them. Like, they did all sorts of stuff like that. And I mean, and what I want you to remember is this is a good thing, because each one of those things that they helped your DM get through, especially as you were just learning to interact with them just as a person and not as like oh, I need you to be with me. Like, no, you're just like, I enjoy this connection with my DM in whatever way that it presents, and I'm just, I'm going to enjoy talking with them when they want to talk with me. I'll text them or call them when I feel like doing it without being attached to whether or not they get back to me. Like, you got into that comfortable space, and spirit made sure you stayed connected. Like, if you had children, that's one way. If you had like some sort of connection business-wise or work-wise, that's another way, or through school or through family or different things like that. And there's many of you too who don't have those direct obvious connections for reasons for staying connected, and spirit still made sure that y'all stayed connected, if nothing else by keeping your DM reaching out to you at certain occasions, or making sure you saw certain things on social medias and stuff like that. And you don't even know how many times in private that your name has been like the hot topic all day long, and usually through the third parties bringing it up. Like, they've been manifesting you more into your DM's life than your DMs have in a lot of ways. And that's part of what spirit has been working with, both, and to help the third parties heal too. Though it's like they got like that. Like, imagine that your DM's like going through a store and they're trying to shop, and they've got a third party adult there who's just constantly talking, constantly fighting, and if there's not fighting, they're trying to do kind of love bombing. And if they're not doing that, then they're trying to make excuses for things that they didn't get done, that they said that they would, or that they should have thought about, because they were so busy being insecure about what was going on with DMs, and the potential that if they didn't keep their DMs' thoughts constantly trained on them, then they might think about you. Like, and I'm not even kidding. There's plenty of them, like, come for me. I'm not going to share people's messages with me. Like, I'm not going to put pictures up, but in my mind, I've already got plenty of concrete evidence from many that is a thing. And these DMs are like in a space to where now, like, those third parties, because they've not listened to spirit yet and gone to the next level, which would be grateful for them, because they're helping our DMs heal in this way. They specialize in helping them this way. And once the DMs stand in their energy and go for independence in healthy ways, these third parties will then take the next step up. They will kind of be where our DMs were when they started out with them. And when you have that in your mind, you are helping uplift everyone, and that helps remove resistance to your union connection too. So keep that in mind. Now, these DMs are like, they're in a space to where the third parties have been doing that for a while, and they clearly don't have anything new in their bag of tricks. Like, they might go back into doing other behaviors, distracting, triangulating, diminishing, trying to imitate you or others, trying to bring up old memory stuff, like trying to create new strings, new contracts. And many of you, many of these DMs too, also got brought into marriage connections, though the problem with that that is that they rush so quickly into it that now there's nothing else to get to in terms of like ways to bring in other people in a social sense, or there's no other power moves. And especially for those of you that did your shadow work when you found out about engagements or marriages and things like that and recognized it doesn't change a damn thing, and that, you know, it's just an experience that they're going through. You don't need to worry about it. Just, you know, enjoy the opportunities to work on your own shadow work about what that stuff means. And a lot of you have done that, and you've not run off, or spirit wouldn't let you run off, and there's still connections in there. And so it's like where there's nowhere to go after that. Like, you know, getting your masculines entangled either with biological children or adoptive children or their own the third party's children, and like doing the marriage thing, doing business stuff, some of them real estate or leases and things like that, and like joint accounts, like they've already, like, I mean, some of them might be able to entangle them in some sort of like payment plan of some kind, though most of them are already there, and these DMs have already seen where that goes and have had their credit ruined and their reputations financially ruined, and you know they're recognizing what's going on. And so on top of these things not working anymore and the DMs being very conscious of all these patterns, it's also having the bonus effect of showing these DMs that they allowed this stuff to happen, and that they allowed themselves to be led by somebody that was giving them signs all along that they were not yet in a place where they should have been trusted with that information and that access and those resources and their, you know, deep devotions. And that's helping these DMs recognize that the relationships they had before you that caused them to fear a full spiritual committed relationship with you were ones where they didn't recognize that most of the people around them had traumas and trauma responses, that they weren't hurting them on purpose because they just enjoyed hurting people, that they weren't able to be in a loving relationship in the way that they wanted, and that these DMs closed themselves up based on the guidance and advice of these same kinds of people and the same kinds of energies of blocking and being resistant to genuine love. And they're getting these awakening moments and awarenesses that you know they didn't have to beat themselves up, that it wasn't bad that they were open and fully giving of themselves before, and it wasn't like the other people weren't bad. They're not bad pickers. It's simply that they had a misunderstanding about what relationships were, what an intention for a relationship was, what the sacred meaning of a relationship is, what they're, you know, that they don't have to come in just to give and be taken from, that it's not a ball and chain thing, that they have many options, you know, like they can experience relationships for convenience, for spirituality, for physical love, for this, or that, you know. And because they've been brought through all these different things, and these third parties are out of bags of tricks, like they only have I was gonna say third party, they only have 3D bags of tricks at this point. Now, a lot of them have even tried to go the spiritual route, and they were able to, on a surface kind of Geminian, Aquarian level, even Libran level of like in unevolved energy, the air signs can imitate very well anything that they want somebody to believe that they know a lot about, even if they don't. But if you question, like if you ask them questions that get to deeper levels of the topics, it ends, because they're not in a vibrational space where they can connect with the depth of that energy because of all the self-doubt and insecurity energy and, you know, victim consciousness energy in there. And a lot of these DMs have connected with, you know, they've gotten to the point to where, yeah, they did believe for a while that they're, you know, some of these third parties were saying they were their twin flames, or they were their soulmates, or they were, you know, magical. And they paid attention to various people talking about the topics, but they really only got the surface level because their subconscious intention was simply to maintain and protect resources. And they were, you know, they were doing what these DMs were doing, is looking at people as, you know, like relationships as being about transactional connections with people. Does this person help me? Does this person let me do what I want? Does this person accept me? Can I get ahead with this person? Can I look good with this person? You know, it was very 3D kind of love sense. Not that it wasn't love, it's just very 3D love. And now that there are no more bags of tricks and they've been in it long enough to see the cycles go around enough times, to see their own cycles, kind of like as if you were watching somebody doing double Dutch jump rope. And when you're watching for, like, say that you watch it at normal speed and you're like, wow, they're moving and there's the song and this and that. And then if you were to slow it down to where you could see the ropes going through and the timing that the person jumps up and down from, and how the cadence of the song can, helps them know when to do it and when to jump in and when to jump out. And they're in that space to where they're recognizing their own behaviors. They're recognizing how they've been controlled by others through lack of awareness of their own, like, reactive behaviors. And now they're able to work with that more. And they've already been in a space where they were, like, conscious of that and going, but you know what, I still would feel bad at just, like, dumping this person off. And now that I'm conscious of what's going on and I have an idea of how to heal myself more, I should give them more of an opportunity. And because of all the spiritual talk going on from these third parties and their attempts to look like they understood the greater nature of things and that there was more there than there was, they want to go further there, and there's nowhere to go because the third parties don't want to, and they just kind of keep. It's like whenever the DMs want to go to these deeper places and try to give them a genuine opportunity to connect with them in ways that they have felt connection with you, and ways that they know that if they hadn't been tangled up in these situations, they would be exploring this with you right now. This is what they want to be exploring. They want to ask you the deep questions. They want to ask you about what different things are like for you to experience. But they also don't want to just, like, toss the baby out with the bathwater because they feel like that's been done to them. And there is some amount of, well, maybe we really are supposed to be connected, and I don't want to jump out of this relationship like I did, the ones before, or like I did with my DF, and realize that it was this person who really was my person. Like, they're fairly sure it's you, though they're still learning, and they just want to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes again, which is really, really good. Send them lots of gratitude energy for that, because you're really gonna like that when they get out of these situations and come to you, because they're not going to run away so much, because they recognize that they've ran away from a lot of beautiful experiences. But they're getting to the space to where they're like, okay, this is not working. And the third parties only have so many tools in their 3D bag. Any ones that you would think of stereotypically on movies or like high school drama sort of stuff, triangulation stuff. And DMs are already coming so far out of that they're recognizing it, and they're kind of in this place where they're no longer, like, resentful and vengeful about it, like, I'm gonna get even with them for doing that, or like, I'm gonna call them out on all their immature behavior. No, they're more in a space of kind of inner peace about it, to where they're like, I can see where we're different people, and that there's not compatibility there, because I want to go this way and they want to go that way. And I can see how my DF has always been traveling in the same direction as me, even when I didn't realize it, even when I felt behind, even when I felt inadequate. Like, we like the same topics, we like to do the same things, and we have enough differences that we keep each other interested, especially because a lot of these DMs were connected with third parties that were like really mirror images of them. And that's because a lot of them were in that space of trying to, like creating a personality for them. And where they're going to learn things next is that when you try to enmesh and be the other person, you lose all of the flavor in things. And that creates, like, this is why polar opposites typically do so much better together than people that are exactly the same. Which, I mean, there's plenty of couples that are completely the same and do well together. It's just more often we see opposites attract. And a lot of these DMs went back into situations that were like home, like their traditions, their cultures, things like that. And they realize that that's where they've been, and that the people that they've been with are the way that they are, and that they don't want to be that way anymore. And these people do want to be they're kind of learning this lesson about letting people go too. Is like it, like in the past, for them to have felt like they wanted to evolve out of their communities or families or things like that felt like a disloyalty, like they were leaving people behind in ways that they felt left behind by others who, they just went off to major and minor things and other dramas, but they didn't think about these DMs. They're, that's my little brother, that's my older brother, whoever, that's my dad, that's my friend, whatever. And they didn't really care about them. They didn't check in with them. They didn't maintain things. And these DMs felt like they wouldn't want to do that to somebody else. And they're starting to heal that place within them that recognizes that, one, when they allow the releasing of old connections to go, it's not going to hurt them and it's not going to hurt the other people. Yes, there will be emotions in some of them, and a little bit of conflict and drama with the ones that they got more deeply entangled in, but they're starting to recognize that they don't need to get caught in the focus of that short period of time, whether that's a few days or a few years. Like, they know oh wow, they're starting to learn what we've learned, is that anybody who connects with them is on a healing path, and that even if they go through some negative experiences with them, even if they're at fault with it, that it equals light and good in the end, that it provides something for them that can help them get to the next space that they want to go to. And they're also realizing that, like, they kind of had this black and white thinking that there was a right way to live and a wrong way to live, and they got to a space of being so disgusted with the ways that the third parties were and that they were participating in, that they associated that with being a bad way to live, especially like when you think of really consumption and transaction based relationships. And then that made them feel bad because they felt like that made them bad, especially because a lot of them were like that with you previously. And now they're starting to realize, like, it's not necessarily bad to live in those ways, like, if you, especially if it makes you happy, if it brings you inner peace. But, well, not but, and they're in a space of going, you know what, that's a much more appealing way to live, is, does this bring me inner peace? Because they're recognizing, when they feel inner peace of mind and heart, that they already get all of the abundances that they felt like they had to work so hard to get in the past. And they like that, and they're starting to get to a place where they're, in their minds and hearts, have already released the old ways, the old versions of them, the third parties that they may be, getting disentangled from in legal 3D senses and social senses. And they're not beating up on themselves for the dramas that are coming up. They're not leaning into the reactiveness, and in each moment they're getting to that space of examining, why do I feel triggered, and what was it what expectation did I have that I feel disappointed about, or what does this betrayal remind me of, and how did these things in the past cause me to act in a negative way with my divine feminine, and how did she manage to heal that stuff, alchemize that stuff. Like, they're really paying attention to what they feel like they've observed from you versus others, and it gets back to that men versus gentlemen thing. And they're realizing that they just had a misunderstanding about things. They wanted to manifest a situation where they felt like a man, because a lot of them too have been, at least that I'm channeling, have been either more effeminate, or they were just really steeped in male ego of the past few centuries of colonizer culture, meaning that they had to be tough and they couldn't have feelings and they had to be providers and protectors and things like that. And they've come to realize they could get with anybody and feel like a man. It, like, reminds me of a scene from Roseanne where Darlene looks at David and says, yo, you want to feel like a man? I'll treat you like a man. Take out the garbage. And that was kind of their notion of what they unintentionally expected it to feel like when a woman was treating them like a man. And then that's making them think about, what, it's not that they didn't feel like a man, but they were not going by what they wanted, what their own version of what masculinity felt like. They were going with a heteronormative, typical version of what a man is. And they did feel that way. And they're realizing they felt that way because they did align with a woman, a feminine, who also believed those things. And that's why they got affirmations of, yeah, that's real manly, or well, most of the time it was with negative reinforcement. That's me, don't be a pussy, or things like that. And they're realizing that the difference, the reason that you are the way that you are, the reason that you are so kind and benevolent and wise and patient and unconditionally loving is because you're a lady. And they're realizing the reason they feel out of alignment with you is because they don't feel like a gentleman, because a lady goes with a gentleman. Excuse me for the, I don't know what the other description would be for non-binary situations in that. I'd see them as energies, but now we're getting more into the gender territory, and my guides tell me that that will get opened up soon. So if you have ideas on that, please feel free to share. Otherwise, you have all my love. So, yes, like a lady and gentleman, gentleman and a lady. Or for those of you that are opening up and realizing that you have like a DM or DF dynamic, a gentleman and a gentleman, a lady and a lady, a DX and a DX kind of thing. And it's not about the same old stuff that like the Bible kind of brought up. It's about the older, more ancestral energies of divine masculine, divine feminine. But some of you enjoy the role play of the sort of like it's, how do I put it? It's like you know of the heteronormative stuff. You know about why it was created there. You know about the subjectiveness. And because you've gone to a conscious place and healed the stuff within you, you can play with those energies and not be entwined by them, entangled by them, and they're really enjoying the deliciousness of having the choice. Oh, I could be a man over here. I could be a man anywhere, but with my divine feminine, I can be a gentleman, and I can define what it means to be a gentleman, and I can see the way that she has defined what it means to be a lady. And if you've been communicating stuff like that to them about, well, I'm a lady, and a lady does this, and a lady does that. Like I told my DM the other day, I said, oh, what is it? A lady does not repeat herself more than twice, you know. And it wasn't towards something that he did. It was something I was showing him that was an interaction I had with someone else, and it was about just saying very simply, or showing that I'm unbothered by the old manipulation tactics that he and others used. And it was an example of, you know, I'm not bitter or resentful towards anything. I just, my boundary, a boundary is something you hold yourself to, not a rule that you hold others to, is when somebody demands that I get extra explaining about things that I've already explained, I don't. And I don't hate on them for it. I just don't, you know, like if it wasn't understandable in the first moment, then either it wasn't the right timing, the door wasn't open for them to hear it, or they needed to have the reaction that they had to it and the confusion to it, and spirit will make sure that other beings come in and help them get the next few pieces, or something later comes up. So I'm no longer stressed about either being misunderstood or triggering people or, you know, doing things like that. I just move through the world as I do, and I don't explain myself more than once. I like the one time, like sometimes it's fun to find another way to describe it, and it really depends. Like, is somebody asking me to elaborate on something because they really like it and they want to understand it, or because they sense there's good healing in it, or are they just saying that because they're overwhelmed and I'm not giving them the attention that they wanted in the moment, or I'm not available for the emotional dumping, or because I'm holding a boundary that shines light on their shadows? Like, you see what I mean? It like depends to me. And they're kind of in that space to where they're recognizing that they can choose this stuff, and that you are very open to whatever way they might choose it, and it's kind of exciting for them. So as people are coming in and out of their lives, in their minds, like their egos are kind of positively evolving. And so it's like, say when they go to work, if they have a customer service job, whenever a masculine comes in, anyone presenting masculine, they think about what are the qualities of masculinity in this person, in this guy, in this man, in this gentleman, and spirit's providing them with plenty of options. I'm seeing one that's like kind of a lumberjack, and one that's kind of a cowboy with a big handlebar mustache, another who's kind of a gentleman with a blazer and a fedora of sorts, another who's like just t-shirts and jeans, others that like button-ups and polos and like different hairstyles, some who keep their hair very nice and short, others who keep it long and scraggly, maybe some dreadlocks in there, you know, and various, you know, just different different things coming into them, and it's like spirit helping them explore what is masculinity in the first place, and what does it mean, and why am I living in the kind that I am when it doesn't feel good, and you know, and what is it that I want, what kind of masculine do I want to feel like, and then they're adding the layer on top of that of, would I qualify this masculine as a man or as a gentleman? And there is no more not a man, because they're realizing that when somebody says you're not a man, what are they saying? They're kind of calling you a woman, and that's not necessary, and it's inaccurate, and you know, and they're realizing that. And so it's not, are you a man or not? It's, are you a man or are you a gentleman? This is just current energies that they're going through right now. And they're also looking at the feminines who come in around them. You know, is this a woman or a lady? Is that a woman or a lady? You know, and they're getting the same kinds of contrast in there. And then as they interact with each of them, rather than interacting from a space of like, what is this person going to do next? What conflict do I have to worry about? Or will it be fun? Or what will they need from me? Or why are they annoying me? Or, you know, things like that. Instead, they're going, what kind of reflection am I going to pull in next? And what is this interaction? What could this interaction mean on a higher level, on a spiritual level? What lesson could this be here for me to learn? That kind of stuff. And it's really great to feel them being in this energy space. It's definitely up leveling in terms of stuff going on. So that's what they're feeling, and this was definitely a lot longer video and a faster speaking pace than I expected. So feel free to go into the settings and slow it down, or, you know, let me know with feedback if you like the pace of this. Otherwise, I have some more videos to do, so I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Mwah.